Men, what I'm about to reveal could save your marriage or finally give you the clarity you've been desperately seeking. As a woman who understands female psychology from the inside, I'm going to expose the 5 specific phrases that wives use immediately after they've crossed the line and been unfaithful. These aren't the phrases you might expect. These aren't obvious confessions or suspicious excuses. These are psychological defense mechanisms disguised as normal conversation, carefully chosen words that allow her to manage her guilt while controlling your perception of reality. I've counseled hundreds of women through relationship crises, and the patterns are shockingly consistent. When a wife has just been unfaithful, her brain goes into damage control mode. She doesn't just hide the evidence, she actively reshapes the narrative to protect herself psychologically and maintain her position in the marriage. The cruel truth is that these phrases work. They're designed to make you feel guilty for suspecting, crazy for questioning, or selfish for having needs. They turn the conversation away from her betrayal and onto your supposed shortcomings as a husband. Before we dive into these devastating revelations, hit that like button right now. This information could literally save other men from years of deception and gaslighting. Subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss content that could protect your marriage and your sanity. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I read every single comment and want to connect with viewers worldwide who are ready to face the truth about infidelity psychology. Now, let's expose these 5 phrases that unfaithful wives use to cover their tracks while making you question your own reality. Phrase 1, I need some space to figure things out. This phrase sounds reasonable, even mature. It appears to be about personal growth and self-reflection. But when it comes immediately after infidelity, it serves a much darker purpose. It's a strategic move to create physical and emotional distance, while she processes her guilt and decides her next steps. Here's the psychological reality. A wife who has just been unfaithful is drowning in conflicting emotions. Guilt, excitement, fear, confusion. Her mind is chaos. The last thing she can handle is your physical presence, your questions, your normal expectations of intimacy and connection. Your very existence reminds her of what she's done, so she creates distance under the guise of needing space. This isn't about finding herself. It's about managing her psychological turmoil without the constant reminder of her betrayal that your presence represents. She needs time to construct a story, to rationalize her actions, to figure out whether she wants to continue the affair or recommit to the marriage. The cruelest part is how this phrase makes you the problem. Suddenly, you're the one who's suffocating her, not giving her room to grow, being too needy or controlling. She's turned her betrayal into your failure as a husband who doesn't understand her need for independence. Watch for the timing of this request. If needing space comes after a period of unusual behavior, working late, being secretive with her phone, emotional distance, changes in physical intimacy, it's often a response to recent infidelity, not a natural relationship development. The psychology behind this is fascinating. She's not just avoiding you, she's avoiding the version of herself that exists when she's with you. When you're around, she has to play the role of faithful wife, which creates unbearable cognitive dissonance with her recent actions. Distance allows her to exist without that constant psychological pressure. Notice how she defines this space. Does she want to stay in the house but avoid deep conversation? Does she want to visit family or friends for extended periods? Does she want separate bedrooms or even separate living arrangements? The more extreme the distance she requests, the more severe the guilt she's trying to manage. Here's what's particularly manipulative. She'll frame this space as beneficial for both of you, even for the marriage. We both need time to think about what we want. This will help us appreciate each other more. Distance will give us perspective on our relationship. She's making her betrayal sound like relationship therapy. The tragic irony is that you, being a loving husband, might actually support this request. You might think you're being understanding and mature by giving her the space she claims to need. Meanwhile, you're unknowingly facilitating her continued deception and emotional processing of her affair. But that's just the beginning. The second phrase is even more psychologically devastating. Phrase 2, "You never really listen to me anymore." This phrase is psychological warfare disguised as relationship feedback. When a wife says this immediately after infidelity, she's not expressing a legitimate communication concern. She's rewriting history to justify her betrayal and shift blame onto you. Here's the manipulation. She's suggesting that her infidelity is actually your fault because you failed her as a communicator and emotional partner. In her mind, she's creating a narrative where she was forced to seek understanding elsewhere because you weren't providing it at home. The psychology behind this is self-preservation through blame transfer. Taking full responsibility for betraying your marriage vows is psychologically crushing. It's much easier to convince herself that you drove her to it through your emotional negligence. This phrase allows her to maintain some sense of victimhood even while being the perpetrator. But here's the cruel reality. She's probably right that you haven't been listening to her lately, because she hasn't been talking to you honestly. When someone is having an affair, they naturally withdraw from their spouse emotionally. She's been sharing her real thoughts and feelings with her affair partner, not with you. So you've been trying to connect with someone who's emotionally checked out, someone who's saving her authentic self for someone else. Of course, it feels like poor communication. She's been communicating deeply, just not with you. The timing of this accusation is crucial. If she's suddenly criticizing your listening skills after months or years of what felt like normal communication, she's likely justifying recent actions rather than addressing long-standing issues. Watch for how she describes this communication problem. Does she give specific examples of times you didn't listen, or is it vague in general? Legitimate communication issues usually involve specific incidents and clear examples. But when this complaint is being used to justify infidelity, it tends to be abstract and unfalsifiable. Here's what's particularly insidious. This phrase trains you to blame yourself for her betrayal. You start thinking, maybe if I had been a better listener, she wouldn't have needed to find emotional connection elsewhere. You become complicit in excusing her infidelity. The psychological goal is to make you feel guilty instead of angry. Guilt makes you want to fix things, to try harder, to prove you can be better. Anger makes you want answers, accountability, and consequences. She needs you guilty, not angry. Notice if she pairs this complaint with praise for someone else's listening skills. He really hears me, or he understands what I'm saying, or I can really talk to him. This comparison isn't accidental. She's highlighting the emotional connection she has with her affair partner while criticizing your failures. The tragedy is that you might actually try to become a better listener in response to this criticism, not realizing that no amount of improved communication will fix the fundamental breach of trust that's already occurred. But the third phrase is the most sophisticated manipulation of all. Phrase 3, "I feel like we're just roommates now." This phrase sounds like a legitimate relationship concern that many long-term couples experience. But when it comes immediately after infidelity, it's actually a psychological strategy to normalize emotional distance and justify seeking intimacy elsewhere. Here's the manipulation. She's suggesting that your marriage has naturally evolved into something platonic and passionless, which makes her affair seem like a reasonable response to an unsatisfying relationship rather than a betrayal of a functioning marriage. The psychology behind this is brilliant and cruel. She's reframing the emotional distance that she created through her affair as evidence that the marriage was already dead. She's making her withdrawal from the relationship look like a mutual drift rather than her unilateral emotional departure. But here's the reality. Relationships often feel like roommate situations when one person is getting their emotional and physical needs met elsewhere. Of course, your marriage lacks passion and intimacy. She's been investing her emotional and physical energy in someone else. The cruel irony is that she's complaining about a problem she created. Her affair caused the emotional distance she's now citing as justification for the affair. It's circular logic designed to confuse you and absolve her of responsibility. Watch for how she describes this roommate feeling. Does she take any responsibility for the emotional distance, or does she present it as something that just happened to both of you? Genuine relationship drift usually involves mutual recognition of both partners' contributions to the problem. Here's what's particularly manipulative. This phrase makes you desperate to prove that you're still passionate lovers, not just roommates. You might try to increase physical affection, plan romantic gestures, or push for more intimacy, all while she's comparing everything you do to her affair partner. The psychological goal is to make you feel inadequate as a husband and lover. She's suggesting that someone else could bring passion back to her life because you failed to maintain it. This sets up a comparison where you're destined to lose because you're competing against the artificial excitement of a forbidden relationship. Notice if she talks about feeling alive or excited in other contexts, while describing your marriage as dead or boring. This suggests she's getting those feelings elsewhere and using the contrast to justify her choices. The timing is crucial. If your marriage felt reasonably connected and intimate until recently, and now she's suddenly describing years of roommate-like existence, she's rewriting history to match her current emotional state. Here's the most painful part. She might genuinely believe this narrative she's creating. The human mind is capable of remarkable self-deception when protecting itself from guilt. She might actually convince herself that your marriage has been passionless for years, even if that wasn't true until her affair began. But the fourth phrase reveals the depth of her psychological manipulation. Phrase 4, I just want to be honest about how I'm feeling. This phrase sounds like emotional maturity and relationship transparency. Who could argue against honesty in marriage? But when it comes immediately after infidelity, this isn't about honesty. It's about selective disclosure designed to manage your emotions while protecting her secrets. Here's the manipulation. She's framing limited truth-telling as complete honesty. She might admit to being confused about the marriage, having doubts about the relationship, or feeling disconnected from you. But she's not being honest about the affair that's causing these feelings. The psychology behind this is sophisticated damage control. She's giving you just enough truth to satisfy your sense that something is wrong, while carefully omitting the crucial information that would explain everything. It's managed honesty designed to prevent you from digging deeper. But here's what's really happening. She's testing the waters to see how much truth you can handle and how you react to relationship uncertainty. If you respond with understanding and support to her honest feelings of confusion, she might interpret that as permission to continue her affair while working on the marriage. Watch for what she's honest about versus what remains mysteriously vague. She might be honest about feeling distant or confused, but completely dishonest about where she was last Tuesday night or who she's been texting. The selectivity reveals the manipulation. The cruel irony is that this phrase makes you grateful for her honesty while she's actually deceiving you about the most important truth of all. You end up praising her for sharing feelings that are actually symptoms of her betrayal, not independent relationship issues. Here's what's particularly insidious. This phrase trains you to accept partial truth as sufficient transparency. You become grateful for emotional breadcrumbs while remaining starved of the real information you need to understand your situation. The psychological goal is to make you feel like you're working together on relationship problems, when actually you're working alone on problems you don't fully understand because you don't have complete information. It creates false intimacy through shared problem-solving while maintaining the emotional distance that protects her affair. Notice if her honesty always leads to conversations about your relationship's problems, but never to conversations about her specific actions, whereabouts, or relationships with other people. True honesty in marriage includes transparency about behavior, not just feelings. The timing is revealing. If she's suddenly interested in honest conversations about feelings after a period of emotional distance and secretive behavior, she's likely managing the guilt and confusion caused by recent infidelity. Here's the most manipulative aspect. She might follow up this phrase with requests for your honesty in return. I'm being honest with you about my feelings. I need you to be honest too. This creates false equivalency between her hidden affair and whatever minor dissatisfactions you might have with the marriage. But the fifth and final phrase is the most devastating psychological attack of all. Phrase 5, maybe we should consider couples therapy. This phrase sounds like someone who's committed to saving the marriage and working through problems together. But when it comes immediately after infidelity, it's often a sophisticated strategy to manage guilt while maintaining control over the narrative of your relationship problems. Here's the manipulation. Therapy becomes a safe space where she can continue to blame relationship problems on mutual issues rather than taking responsibility for her betrayal. She can guide conversations toward communication problems, intimacy issues, or compatibility concerns, while the elephant in the room, her affair, remains hidden. The psychology behind this is remarkable. She's positioning herself as the partner who's willing to work on the marriage, making you look resistant or uncommitted if you have any hesitation about therapy. Meanwhile, she's protecting her secret while appearing to be the more invested spouse. But here's what's really happening. Therapy gives her a legitimate reason to discuss relationship problems and dissatisfactions with a professional authority figure. She can air grievances about the marriage while appearing to seek solutions, all while her affair remains her secret trump card. The cruel irony is that couples therapy can't work when one partner is hiding a fundamental betrayal. You end up trying to fix communication and intimacy problems that are actually symptoms of infidelity, not causes of relationship breakdown. It's like trying to heal a wound while the knife is still in your back. Watch for how she describes the problems she wants to address in therapy. Does she focus on your contributions to relationship issues while minimizing her own role? Does she seem to have a clear agenda about what needs to be fixed about you or the marriage? Here's what's particularly manipulative. This phrase makes you feel hopeful about saving the marriage, while she's simultaneously maintaining the affair that's destroying it. You invest emotionally and financially in therapy, while she continues her betrayal, potentially using insights from therapy to better manage both relationships. The psychological goal is to create the appearance of working on the marriage while actually managing her guilt and buying time to decide between her affair partner and her husband. Therapy becomes a delay tactic rather than a genuine attempt at reconciliation. Notice if she seems more interested in therapy than in immediate changes to her behavior, communication patterns, or relationship with you. Someone genuinely committed to saving the marriage usually wants to start making changes right away, not just talk about making changes with a therapist. The timing is crucial. If she's suddenly interested in professional help after you've been asking for better communication or more intimacy for months or years, she's likely responding to crisis management needs rather than genuine relationship improvement desires. Here's the most devastating aspect. She might use therapy as a place to gradually introduce the idea that the marriage isn't working, using the therapist's authority to validate her perspective that separation or divorce might be the healthiest option. She's potentially grooming both you and a professional to accept the end of your marriage. The tragedy is that many men feel encouraged by their wife's suggestion of therapy, seeing it as evidence that she wants to fight for the marriage. Meanwhile, she might be using therapy as a socially acceptable way to process her guilt while maintaining her affair and planning her exit strategy.